Welcome to Tech Corner right here on Mr. Positive Live, your home for positive talk. Today on Mr. Positive Live, we're looking at an inexpensive iPhone. This is a budget iPhone. That's what we would consider it here. This is the iPhone 14 released back in October of 2022. This is making it we're considering this a budget iPhone. Okay, now maybe you're someone out there looking to upgrade your phone. Maybe you're coming from an older iPhone XS Max, 10R, iPhone 11, iPhone 12, and maybe you don't want to spend a lot of money on the new 16 or even the 15 series. The iPhone 14 is a perfect mixture because you are getting a decent performing smartphone with 6 gigabytes of RAM. You're also getting the latest iOS updates. You're getting decent cameras that can shoot in 4K 60. You're getting the whole bang for your buck here on this phone. You're getting 5G connectivity, and it's also eSIM compatible as well. Let's get into the details of the iPhone 14. I do think this is a solid smartphone. Now, this one does get a lot of ups and downs because it's using the A15 Bionic chip, which was also used in the iPhone 13. But here's the difference. The A15 chip that's being used in this phone is the same chip that's being used in the iPhone 13 Pro series. Not the standard iPhone 13, the Pro series. That's giving you one extra core, so a little bit more power efficiency. You're also getting 6 gigs of RAM versus 4 gigs. So you're getting 2 additional gigs of storage, which makes it better for multitasking and stuff like that. Okay? So let's start with the positives of the phone. You are getting an OLED display. That's a 6.1 inch display. You are getting wireless charging at 15 watts. Negative is you're still using Lightning. Still using a Lightning charger here. Now, if you upgrade to say the iPhone 14 Pro, you will get Type C. So if you get the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, you will be going from Lightning to Type C. So that's a good thing right there. So if you're someone who wants fast charging, you want Type C charging, maybe you get a lot of Type C chargers lying around the house. If you're an Android user like I am, you probably have a lot of Type C chargers lying around the house. Lightning's a lot slower. Okay, so having Type C does make a difference in the charging speeds as well. That's one of the benefits to this, but you also got wireless charging, so that helps as well. Another benefit to the phone is it does have MagSafe, okay? Unlike the 16E that was released about 4 months ago, this gives you MagSafe, okay? Apple doing away with MagSafe on the 16E was a stupid thing to do, okay? This gives you MagSafe. This gives you the same display size as the 16E. Mine's with the 16E, but you actually are getting an additional ultra-wide camera. The difference with the 16E is you're getting a 48 megapixel sensor versus this one, okay? But it does help having the 12 megapixel ultra wide, okay? Let's get into the other benefits. The phone is getting the latest software updates, so you're getting iOS 18.5, and you will get maybe 2 or 3 more years of software updates, so that's an awesome thing to see from Apple. And also the build quality. You're getting IP68 water and dust resistance. So that's a great thing. You're getting shatterproof glass. You don't have to worry about the screen shattering on you too often. And there's glass on both sides, so it's a decent build quality. Okay, Apple's done a really solid job. That's why I think it's one of the better budget iPhones you can buy right now. Because one is, it's normally not that old. It's only been out 3 years, going on 4 in October. You are going to get a few more years of updates, maybe 3 more years of software updates, so it's really not that bad. Really, this one's not much slower than the iPhone 15. And how Apple does things is, with this series of phones and the iPhone 15, if you went with a 14 Pro Max or 14 Pro series, you would be getting that A16 Bionic chip found in the iPhone 15. So buying a 14, which may be on sale, if you can find a 14 Pro on sale, versus buying the 15, you're going to be getting the same chip that's found on the iPhone 15 on the 14 Pro Max. They just carried it over to the 15. So it's the same phone. And with the 14 Pro Max, you get an additional 12 megapixel sensor, which is nice, and 120 hertz. One of the downfalls to this phone, and for a lot of the iPhones, even to the 16, is a lack of fast motion. motion detection, like 120 hertz refresh rate. Having a faster refresh rate makes phones seem like they're faster. Going to a 60 hertz panel like this, not that it's a big deal for Apple users, but let me show you something here in a minute. So here's an Android smartphone that uses 90 hertz refresh rate. And some of these other Android phones have 120 hertz refresh rates. And in order to get that with Apple, you have to upgrade to an iPhone Pro series model. So in order to get 120 hertz, so or even 90 hertz at that matter. So take a look at this. This is the difference between a 90 hertz refresh rate and a 60 hertz refresh rate. You can see it's a lot snappier and stuff. Not that this is an expensive phone, but we are looking at a Samsung phone here. You can see that it's a much different with the A series phone. Even though it's an A series phone with a budget processor, you do have a 90 hertz refresh rate, and you can see that's much quicker than, say, your traditional 60 hertz. Let me show you the same thing with Facebook on the iPhone with a 60 hertz refresh rate. Now this iPhone here has the same Facebook opened and everything, but here's the difference between a 60 hertz refresh rate. Watch how slow this is. See how much slower that is over a 90 hertz refresh rate? So it's a big difference when you have a faster refresh rate because things load a lot faster and you don't have to worry about things being so slow. That's kind of why I tell people sometimes using a 90 hertz refresh rate makes a big difference. Even a 60 hertz refresh rate. Even applications tend to load faster. You can see how much slower that is. Not that it's lagging, but you can see the difference between a 60 hertz panel and a 90 hertz panel. It's almost night and day. So this phone here is a budget smartphone. This is a Blue View. This is the Blue View Speed Ultra. We reviewed this phone a month ago, and you can see that this phone is not an expensive device. It's a cheap Android smartphone with a 90 hertz refresh rate. Here's the difference between a 90 hertz refresh rate and a 60 hertz. This is opening Facebook on a 90 hertz refresh rate. Okay, pretty quick right there. Okay, let's take a look on a 60 hertz panel. Here's a look at that 60 hertz panel. Now it just takes a few minutes, but this is because we're using a 60 hertz panel. It has nothing to do so much with the internet speed, but it is a 60 hertz panel. And when you're using a slower panel, a 60 hertz refresh rate, things just load a lot slower, or they lag a little bit, or just doesn't seem as responsive as, say, a 90 hertz refresh rate or 120 hertz. Now, this phone still outperforms the Blue phone in all areas, but for some reason, thanks to a 90 hertz refresh rate, it's a lot quicker. And you can see that in everyday usage, even with Facebook applications. Okay. Now, some applications are made for Apple and may load faster. Some softwares that may be made for Android might run faster. Phones with 120 hertz refresh rate are going to run smoother, faster, and better. Yes, it will eat up battery performance, but overall, that's the reason why people go with Android smartphones. Even the cheaper Android phones under $200 are still giving you 90 hertz, 120 hertz. It's just Apple needs to take these phones. This is a problem. Apple makes you go out. This phone right now retails for $400 in 2025, and it only gives you a 60 hertz panel. Even back in 2022 and 2023, 90 hertz panels were still being used on Android phones over iPhones. Now, in order to get that same technology, Apple makes you go out and dish out an extra, couple $100 compared to the phone I just showed you. So it's really not worth having to pay $1,000 for the Pro Series device to get better, faster 120 hertz refresh rate, when you can go and pay half the price, buy a Blue phone, buy a Samsung device, buy a Moto G phone, Motorola device, will give you 120 hertz, 140 hertz in some areas over this thing. I mean, this phone does run good, but when it comes to a refresh rate, once you get used to a 90 hertz or even 120 hertz, it's really hard to go back to something like an iPhone. Especially an iPhone Standard Edition, the 15, the 14, all have the same panel. All the way up to the 16. Now there is talk of the 17 having a 90 hertz refresh rate on their base model, maybe 120 hertz. I think from what I've been reading, it's probably going to be 90 hertz. But even 120 hertz wouldn't hurt. Even 90 hertz is still better than the standard 60 hertz refresh rate. Okay, so the benefits to the phone is great sound. You got stereo speakers. You do have MagSafe, which is awesome if you have MagSafe accessories. There is wireless charging at 15 watts. I would take this phone over the 16E. Now the 16E is going to have a better chipset with the A18 chipset. This is not a bad phone. It's not even sluggish really. It's just a 60 hertz panel. And even that 60 hertz panel is still being used on the iPhone 15, the 16, and even onto the new 16E. Now we're hoping that the 17 can change this and make it so it's faster refresh rate. I think that's needed now. Apple's reached a point now where Android phones, even the cheap ones, are outperforming them on basic applications. Now the iPhone's going to kill most of those cheaper Android phones in gaming, GPU speeds, and things like that. It's not even going to be close. But when it comes to opening up an app like Facebook, it shouldn't take that long, okay? Come on now. I mean, that's a 60 hertz panel. That's why. If you could upgrade that panel to 120 hertz or 90 hertz refresh rate, I think more people would be happier, okay? The positives of the phone: OLED display, 800 nits of brightness, so you can view it plenty outside. It's not bad. Great camera on here. The camera is probably the reason for the phone, or paying the price for the phone, because you are getting a solid camera on here. And you're getting good night mode on here, so you can take photos at night, stuff like that. It's got an ultra wide mode, so it's not the Pro series, but it's not a bad camera, to be honest with you. Definitely beats the 13. It's on par with the 15 in camera use. Overall, it gets a pass. 5G connectivity. Like I was saying, 5G connectivity, OLED display, stereo speakers. It's fast. It's perfect for elderly person who wants a simple phone that can be their first smartphone. If you're not looking to buy the brand new iPhone, this can still be had at Walmart, Straight Talk. It's a perfect like a prepaid phone if you're looking for something for your kid, or maybe just as a burner phone or something. The iPhone 14 is a great usable device. It beats the iPhone 13. It's similar to the iPhone 13, but it is slightly faster as I've been messing with it. For Mr. Positive Live, I'm Mr. Positive. The iPhone 14 does get a pass by me. Have a great day. Thanks for watching Positive Talk Daily.